Hello, I'm going to do a review today. It's October 9th, which is John Lennon. It would have been John Lennon's 78th birthday, so happy birthday, John. So I was going to do a John Lennon album review today because I haven't actually reviewed any of John's solo stuff. I've had a look and I've actually only ever done solo McCartney albums. I haven't done any John, George or Ringo, which I'm eventually going to do. But I thought before I'd start getting into the Beatles solo albums properly, I'd finish off the rest of the sort of Beatles things I need to do. So I'm going to do this album today, Live at the Hollywood Bowl, which is the one and only proper live album we've got from the Beatles. So yeah, this album is the 2016 version. It was quite a long and winding road, pardon the pun, to get there to this, but yeah, get it out and show you it. This is that's the back. It's a gatefold with this written in it. It's quite a nice gatefold actually. I like this picture of them actually on the sleeve, and I'm not going to get that out, it won't go, it'd be bad to get it back in. It's probably on the Apple label, is it? Nope, just a blue thing that says the Beatles at the Hollywood Bowl, but you've probably seen it. But I'll talk about the artwork in a little bit, but first up I'll talk about the the background of this album and the path to get to it, because it wasn't an easy one to get to. They took the time getting to it. So the story begins in August 1964. The Beatles were to play a concert in New York City, and Capitol Records, the Beatles label in the States, wanted to make a live album out of this concert, but they weren't allowed to record it for some reason. So instead, they decided to record the Hollywood Bowl concert in '64. So the concert happened, it was recorded, then afterwards Capitol Records listened back to the tapes, and they were pretty rubbish. So fast forward a year, the Beatles came back in 1965 and again did 2 shows at the Hollywood Bowl, which were recorded. Same thing happened, the tapes were rubbish in terms of quality. So the band had to unfortunately scrap the project of the live album. And by the end of the 60s, the Beatles were about the only major act who didn't have a live album out. Although John Lennon said in 1971 that there was a live album available in Italy, which kind of sent people, you know, to a bit of a frizz. People trying to find it. It doesn't actually exist. John was either getting confused or making it up. He was probably making it up to wind people up, knowing him. But anyway, so following on from the release of Let It Be, Phil Spector was given the tapes to try and salvage something out of this album. So obviously his history has shown he must have failed. He mustn't have, either he hasn't bothered trying or he couldn't, because it got shelved again until 5 years later in 1976, when George Martin was given the tapes. So Capitol Records sent the tapes over to London, where George Martin and Jeff Emerick got to work on trying to get a live album out of it. So they're being recorded on 3-track, and they didn't have any 3-track machines at Air Studios at this point. So George and Jeff, Jeff Emerick died last week, by the way, as I'm sure you've all heard, unfortunately. Rest in peace, Jeff. So they had to find a 3-track machine to play the tapes. So they found one, and apparently when they put the tapes on them, the tapes caught fire. So that's probably the reason why we don't have full concert, because I imagine some of the songs got destroyed. But anyway, I think it was Jeff Emerick decided the best solution, because they had to use this machine to get the tapes across onto, I think it was 16 tracks, a 16-track machine. So Jeff Emerick appointed a vacuum cleaner, a Hoover it, to keep it cool whilst the tapes did the thing, and it worked. So anyway, they eventually got to work at mixing the album, sequencing it, and yeah, we got there in the end, because we got the album in 1977, which was this one. I should have held this one up. The Beatles at the Hollywood Bowl. So this is an original one, this isn't mine, I think it's my dad's, this one. Yeah, this is on the Parlophone label, I think. Get it out. It is on the Parlophone label. which is interesting how it's not on Apple, but I suppose Apple wasn't really doing much in '77. I think it ceased operations in '76, and it went exclusively to just doing Beatles things. So you'd think this would have been on Apple, but it's not. The gatefold this as well, which is again a nice gatefold. And it's got sleeve notes from George Martin, which are actually, these sleeve notes are included on the 2016 version. So yeah, that's a UK version. I've also got this one. Well, my dad has. I don't know where this one's from. It's on MFP, Music for Pleasure. I don't know where it's not a gatefold, this one. The back's the same. It's on a red label. Yeah, I don't know where this one's from, which is interesting. Yeah. So anyway, this album came out in 1977, and despite the fact it was the height of punk, it went to #1 here in the UK. So 7 years after the Beatles had split, and over 10 years since they'd been recorded, this album topped the charts. I think it got to #2 in America, but don't quote me on that, I might be wrong. So, yeah, and it was also released on cassette. But a few years later, similarly to the Let It Be film, they stopped production of this album, and it disappeared for years, probably because the quality wasn't great. So, yeah, I think it was in the 80s they stopped making it, unfortunately. Anyway, then in the 90s we obviously got we got the first BBC album. Then in 2013 we got the second BBC album, which were good. I like them, but it's not the same. It's not a proper concert. It doesn't have the energy of a Beatles concert. So let's fast forward again to 2016. Capitol Records is sorting out something in their vaults, their tapes probably, and they come across these Hollywood Bowl recordings, which they send across to Giles Martin at Abbey Road in London, who then gets to work on this album because he finds out that the tapes that Capitol Records have sent are actually better quality than the tapes that they had in London, that George Martin and Geoff Emerick had used in the 70s. So, they've been working on this technology, which is still quite new, called demixing, which apparently allowed them to separate tracks that weren't originally separated. So what I mean is the screams, which were part of the original tracks, could now be separated onto an individual track, so they could lower the screams or remove them completely. But they decided to leave them in, just lower them down quite a bit, just so it still has that energy, because it was part of the Beatles concert, the screaming, so they had to include it, otherwise they'd be kidding themselves, really. So they did that. They could also separate all the Beatles onto individual tracks, the vocals, the bass, the drums, etc. And this is quite interesting, because this was a problem they had when they were working on the anthology songs, Free as a Bird and Real Love, and that third one, Now and Then. Hopefully Paul finishes it one day. The big problem they had with that was John's vocals and the piano were stuck on the same track, but if they're able to do it on this, I would imagine they could possibly separate John's vocals and piano off them songs. But anyway, that's a different topic for a different day. So anyway, this album came out on September 9th, I think it was, 2016, to coincide with the film 8 Days a Week. I'll talk about that bit there in a minute. It got to #3 here in the UK. I don't know where it got to in America. Probably didn't get, maybe got to #3 there as well, I don't know. But yeah. Now, when marketing this album, they said that this album is not a remaster of this. It is an entirely new thing. That just pays sort of homage to the original. Yet, despite this, the track listing is the same order, which is bizarre, I think. And George Martin's sleeve notes were included, so, you know. But something that is included on this is 4 extra bonus tracks that aren't on here, which shoved on at the end, which I'm not a fan of them being shoved on at the end. If it's not a remaster, if it's a new album altogether, why didn't they sequence them into the actual album? Because, you know, Long Tall Sally is the last song in the original, and Paul says it's the last song just before they play it. And then suddenly you've got another 4 tracks, which I suppose you could say is an encore, but pretty rubbish encore if Baby's in Black's the last song they finished with. So I just think the bonus track should have been sequenced into the original. So anyway, that's the album. That's the background, I should say. Before I do the track by track thing, I want to talk about the artwork, especially for this, because it's maybe just me, but I think this artwork is appalling. It is terrible. I'd rather they'd just used this. I mean, look at them. I mean, neither of them are particularly brilliant artwork, but I think that one's the better one. That one I'm not going to go back out again, but on the sleeve I think should have been the album cover. And I'm not a fan of them painting this on it either, 8 days a week to market the film, because yeah, it's a live album, but at the end of the day it's not really got anything to do with the film. It's just a live album that's existed a lot longer, even if it's not a remaster. But yeah, it's stupid, I think, putting this on, and it looks stupid now 2 years on from it, because you know, the film, as good as it was, it's kind of not talked about that often anymore, as this album is still a sort of thing that Beatles fans want. You know, it's a proper Beatles album, it's a live album, it's the only proper live album we've got from them, and they've marketed this across it. Which, I like the film, I do like the film. I think if you're a Beatles fan, the anthology is still a damn sight better than 8 days a week, but yeah, I just don't think they should have put this on it, and I don't think this is the best picture they could have used either. I mean, you know, it's like, it's not even, I think it's taken in San Francisco. Why have we not used a picture of them at the Hollywood Bowl? You know, it's bizarre. Anyway, so yeah, I don't like the artwork on this. I'm not a big fan of it on the original, but it's better than on this at least. Anyway, tracks. So the tracks are a mixture of the two, of the three concerts from 65 and 66. It's more from the 65 concert, I think, than the 64 concert. They're more from the 65 one, which I think was the better concert anyway. In terms of the set list, I preferred the set list to the 65 to than the 64 one. But yeah, it's not a complete concert. It sort of interjects between the two. It's sort of a highlights album, I suppose. But it opens to Twist and Shout from 65. This is the shortened version. Good recording, I like this one. Flows into She's a Woman, 65 again. I like this song. I think I prefer this song live, to be honest, than on record. The original B-side to I Feel Fine. I think it's a better song done live. Yeah, Paul sings it well. Great rhythm guitar from John. Yeah, sounds great. Dizzy Miss Lizzy comes next. Now this one's interesting. It's from 65, but it's a mixture of the two days. I think the first half of the song is from the first concert, and then the second half from the second one, because for some reason the recordings weren't great of this song, so they had to sort of mash them together in order to get it done properly, to get it to sound right. You couldn't tell from listening to it that it's two different takes. It's two songs merged together. But it's decent enough. I think John's vocals are good. I like this song. He sings it well. Then we've got Ticket to Ride again from 65. Yeah, really good. Paul and John sing it good. Great song. Great done live. Can't Buy Me Love comes next again from 65. I'm not the biggest fan in the world of this song anyway, but it's decent enough here. It's done well live. Things We Said Today is next from 64. It's the first song we've got from 64. So it's quite interesting, this song, because I don't think this one was done live all that often. It was obviously done live in 64, but I don't think it was done live every night. I might be wrong there, but I really like this song. It's done really well, and the energy that's in Paul's voice, especially on the middle bit. Me, I'm just the lucky kind, the lucky guy. In the middle, when he sings that bit, his energy is out of this world. It's amazingly done. And George's backing vocals is great. Then we've got Roll Over Beethoven from 64. George sings it well. It's pretty good. Yeah, like this. Boys comes next from 64. I'm not the biggest fan in the world of this song. There's a music video of this one actually that they made to promote this album. It's interesting that they chose this song to make the video for, but Ringo sings it well. There is a lot of energy in this performance, but yeah. Then we've got Hard Day's Night. This one's from 65. They performed this song in both 64 and 65, but they've obviously gone for the 65 version. It's probably the better version. Yeah, again, great song. It's performed really well. After that, we've got Help from 65. It's a classic, it's a brilliant song. So you might be wondering why I've got two copies of this. They're both my dad's. Now I imagine one of these belonged to my dad's mate, who he's very good friends with. He was very good friends with, and he was a big Beatles fan, my dad's mate. So I imagine this one was my dad's, the original UK copy, and wherever this one's from is probably his, because he's probably got multiple versions from other countries. But if you've heard this album, which you probably have if you're watching this video, just before Help is performed, there is someone points a light at the stage and it must catch John's attention. And to this day, my dad and his mate, whenever they see each other, quote this. My dad will shout, you know, it's quite embarrassing at times, to be honest. But if we're coming down the street and he sees him, my dad will shout, "Who's that man on the light?" And then he'll look over and go away with that light, will you? They still do it to this day, but that's where it's from, this version of Help. It's quite funny, actually. Sorry, that was a terrible impression, by the way. But yeah, the song itself is pretty good. Yeah, after that we've got All My Lovin' from 64. Great song, great performance, great vocals from Paul, great backing from George. It's good. Then we've got She Loves You from 64, which John refers to as an oldie from last year. For all the old people in the audience, it was only, I don't even think it'll have been a year old at this point, this song. It'll probably only been 6 months maybe, but whatever. Done brilliantly, as you would expect. And then we've got the closing track, Long Tall, well, it's not the closing track anymore, the closing track of the original, Long Tall Sally from 64. As usual, Paul sings this brilliantly. He always sings this one great. He throws absolutely everything he's got into it. Yeah, I love Long Tall Sally, it's fantastic. Done fantastically. So that's where the original album ended, but this one continues with bonus tracks, which I'm not a fan of them being called bonus tracks either, because bonus tracks implies that they're only available on certain versions, but as far as I'm concerned, wherever you buy this album, these are always included, so they're not really bonus tracks, they're just standard tracks. But I do think they should have been thrown in to the actual album, thrown in somewhere, so that Long Tall Sally remained the closing track, but whatever. You Can't Do That is the first one from 64. The way Giles Martin has made this does make it sound like that they've gone off stage after Long Tall Sally and come back on for an encore, which does sound quite good, but if this was the encore, it'd be pretty disappointing. But You Can't Do That is a good, strong song, actually. It's done really well. For whatever reason, Paul and George aren't doing the backing vocals for quite a bit of the song. I don't know whether they forgot or the mic wasn't working, or they do eventually come back in and start doing them, but nevertheless, it's a good song. I Want to Hold Your Hand from the 64 concert is next. This has actually been used previously, this recording, on the Love album, I believe. But this is the first time I got it properly, the proper original recording. Yeah, decent enough. I'm not the biggest fan in the world of this song, to be honest, but yeah, it's alright. It's an alright performance of it. Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby's next, from 65. George sings this. It's a Carl Perkins song originally. It's off Beatles for Sale. Again, it's alright. It's nothing special. The song, I mean, they perform it well, but I'm not the biggest fan in the world of the song. And then we have the closing track, Babies in Black, from 65. What an underwhelming way to finish this album this is. Not that I don't like the song, it's just a bit slow. If they'd have been better putting You Can't Do That last, it should have been a much better one to end on, if they had to end on a bonus track. But this song, this version of Babies in Black, was the B-side to Real Love. So this one had been available in the past. But yeah, it's included on here, which is nice. And that's it. That's Live at the Hollywood Bowl. There's a couple of things that are missing. If I Fell from the 64 concert would have been nice, because that one wasn't done live all that often. And we know there's a recording of it, because on bootleg copies of this album, If I Fell's included. So why it's not been included on the official thing, I don't know. But that's just the way it is. I feel fine's not included and down's not included. Maybe these were on the tape that caught fire. I don't know. But yeah, that's Live at the Hollywood Bowl. It's not the greatest live album in the world, but it's nice to have. And they sound good. It does sound really good getting to hear the Beatles properly, but yeah, it's just one of them things that it's all we can get, really. It's the only thing they recorded. Don't think it's the best concerts they ever did. You know, you never know. We might get a live version of the Rooftop concert eventually, but I don't know, because that was recorded as well. But for now, this is decent enough. Not the best, not the worst, but yeah. Thank you for watching. See you next time.